Hello everyone, this is Gary from the Seer's Cave, and I've felt drawn really to do another sort of face-to-face video really um, by my good friend Shawn from Gypsy's Closet, because I happened upon a video response that he did to somebody, let me just check, called Dark Spirit, and it was kind of interesting really because the basic sort of gist of the whole kind of conversation between the two of them was, or certainly from Shawn's side, I didn't see what Dark Spirit originally posted, but the sort of the gist really of his response was, in a sense, the kind of notion that many people who are witches or Wiccans or pagans of various sort of particular paths. I don't particularly consider myself to be a witch or Wiccan, but I am pagan. They kind of struggle with sort of depression and difficult emotions, and it's kind of, you know, a sort of a struggle really day to day. And it really sort of struck a chord with me, and I thought I'd record this video as a little bit of a, not only a sort of an insight into my own life and my own experiences, but also as kind of support for both Shawn and for Dark Spirit, to sort of say, yeah, you know, more of us than you know go through these kinds of things. There's no script to this video. I don't actually know how long the video is going to last, or you know, moment to moment, even what I'm going to say. I'm literally just speaking this as it comes to me. I have my trusty rose quartz with me because I have a feeling, with some of the things that I'm likely to be drawn to unpack, I have a feeling that I'm going to need it. So yes, I've also got this ridiculously sunny yellow t-shirt on to sort of raise my own energy a bit. Yeah, so it's an interesting one really. Now, for myself, depression is something that I have struggled with and suffered with for many, many years. It all sort of kind of channels into and goes back to my childhood and my sort of growing up and becoming pagan. I mean, I grew up in a really loving household, you know, with fabulous parents, I think, you know, really loving people. And you know, but I always felt a little bit different, and I always felt very, very timid and very, very shy, which is perhaps a little bit unusual for somebody of the Leo star sign, but I always felt very kind of introverted, very scared. And I got to sort of, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years of age, and had a bit of a bombshell dropped really, because I discovered I was gay, which you know, was a bit of a shock to me. Not as much of a shock as it was to my parents, who handled it as well as I suppose anybody could be expected to handle something like that. Now, I'm not saying it's good, it's bad, whatever. I'm simply saying that's what happened. And I spent 3 years probably struggling along with this. I'm also a musician. I'm a trained singer, classical guitarist, electric guitarist, bass guitarist. You know, I have a string of letters after my name in the musical field, and I spent a lot of time singing in choirs. You can probably tell from the depth of my voice, I'm a basso profundo. And I spent a lot of time singing in choirs, being in churches, being around churches, listening to vicars and priests and various others in church services, looking at Christianity as a religion, and realizing that the way it was being put across to me by the people who were putting it across, it didn't resonate with me. And it always comes back to that same thing that we hear over and over and over again: Leviticus. I'm not going to quote chapter and verse on it, because I'm sure there are people out there who can do that far, far better than I can. But yeah, so I it just never felt comfortable to me, and I always felt like I was pretty much, I wouldn't even say, a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. I would say a star-shaped peg trying to fit into a round hole. It was just not going to happen. And yeah, I got to round about sort of 15 years of age and began to look into different things, really, look into different religions, different belief systems. And I have to say, Wicca was one of the first that I encountered. I discovered in our local library a wonderful book by Stuart and Janet Farrer. Stuart Farrer hasn't been with us for a number of years now, but Janet is still going strong, and she has, she's dealt with the loss of Stuart. And fantastic book, one I would certainly recommend people go out and have a look at if they can still get it. And it was called Spells and How They Work, and it has this incredible image on the front of it, and it is this woman, which I think possibly was Janet in her younger days, and she has this hair which is kind of long, comes down and parts in the middle, and she sat in front of this camera, in front of this candle, and she has her hands out like this, and she's staring intently into this candle, and incredible. And I read that book from the library, cover to cover, for 6 months, over and over and over again, and loved it, absolutely loved it. Kept borrowing it. It was spent more time in my house than it did in the library, and eventually I had to return it because it was requested by somebody else, and I did. But my mum took notice of this book that I had been reading, and she just happened, and it's incredible. You see, this is the incredible thing about the universe, because she was in a local market in a village near where I live, and she just happened to be sort of walking past this bookstore, and she saw this picture on this this front cover of this book, and she bought it for me, and that was one of my Christmas presents that year. And I unwrapped it, and well, there is this book. I finally had this book that I'd spent so much time reading. And yes, incredible, absolutely incredible. I just absorbed it, every little detail that I could in that book. And it really made me realise that perhaps there was something else that I could look at, something else that I could do, another path that I could follow. So I instantly started reading everything I could get my hands on, and took a craft name, Gedril, which sort of came to me in a meditation that I did at the time. And I'm coming up 38, so that's 23 years, and that name still holds true to me. That is still my spiritual name. And it was interesting because being able to focus on these things really helped me to get over dealing with the things that I was dealing with in my personal life at the time. Because I did all the usual things. Especially for a musician, I was in school choirs, I was in local choirs, right the way through doing my guitar things as well. Went off to music college in my early 20s, loved that, had a wonderful time, but I always felt a little bit reticent and a little bit kind of like an outsider, and spent an awful lot of time alone at that point. Up to this point, had never dated, had never, I won't say I hadn't thought about it, because I had thought about it, but I had never had the courage to say, you know what, I need this. I actually need to get out there, to meet people, to connect with people. I always had this barrier, this stigma about who I was, what I was, which was really, really difficult for me. And, that went on till I was 26. And then, age 26, I just had enough, and it was right. Now this is going to change. So I went out and I started doing what you do, meeting people. And probably around about the age of 28, I met a guy, lived a little way from me, but, certainly by American standards, he was on my doorstep. But by British standards, he was, it was a half-hour train journey or whatever. And fell in love, thought, yes, finally, this is it, wonderful, brilliant. I should have been so lucky, as the Kylie Minogue song says. And spent 2.5 years with him. And there's a lot of sort of detail that I'm going to leave out of this at this point, because first and foremost, this video would last all night. Secondly, you probably don't want to hear it. But suffice to say that that was the hardest 2.5 years of my life. I had encountered somebody who was cold, who was calculating, who was very, very cruel mentally and emotionally, who even, his own father said was a cold fish, which is if that phrase doesn't translate terribly well, if you're listening to that and thinking, well, what is a cold fish? Somebody who is very callous, who is very, very calculating and cold, who is so sparing with their emotions that you really don't know where you are from one day to the next. And all manner of things happened. I mean, I spent probably 6 months, 9 months with him in the town that he was living in, and then he decided to move. And I'd already moved in with him by this point, so I went along, and that was a big mistake. And he was to say that he wasn't supportive is the understatement of the year. My faith went completely out the window, because it was criticised, I was criticised, everything I did, everything I felt, everything I believed in, everything I liked, listened to, watched, did, even to the point of how to brush my teeth, was criticised, was corrected, like some kind of bonkers school teacher, disciplining a naughty child. And I've got to be honest, it absolutely ruined me. It totally destroyed me. And I spent a lot of time crying, and I spent a lot of time wondering what on earth I had done to deserve somebody like that. And depression set in, big style. I didn't want to go out. I had no choice because I had to work, but I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to speak to people. I didn't even want to get up in the morning. But again, I had no choice. And living in his family home with him and his father and his brother, cocooning myself off in a room wasn't an option. In fact, I actually stood more chance of being happy being out of the house than I did being in it. And we got to the end of the 2.5 year period, and I had actually reached the stage where sat in a coffee shop with a friend who I'd made while I was down south, which is where I'd sort of moved. I'd moved down to the south of England. I actually couldn't decide what size of coffee to order. That is how bad it had gone. And it's no exaggeration to say that I had considered options, let us say, because I'm not entirely sure about YouTube's, shall we say, legal requirements, but I had considered options that I would never normally consider. But fortunately, that relationship ended, and I say fortunately because it really did save me, that relationship ending. And I moved back up north to where I am now in Doncaster, and tried to put the pieces back together. Very, very quickly after I started talking to other people, I think because I had to. If I'd have sat and stewed, I'd have probably been 10 times worse. So I started talking to people online and encountered somebody else, and once again sort of went through the whole schmeal all over again. But fortunately, he was not as gifted, shall we say, at destroying somebody as the first guy. But that went on about a year, and that ended as well, because I think by that point I'd started to get a little bit of my confidence back. I'd started to realise that there were certain things that I wasn't prepared to accept, and when the sort of crunch time came, I realised, I wasn't going to get anywhere being in that relationship. So I sort of moved on from it, had a blazing row with him, and then spent a week where he wouldn't answer texts and what have you, and in the end I just said, look, I've had enough. Had enough of this. But again, that set the whole sort of depression thing off, and to cut a very, very long story short, because as I say, this could go on for a long time, I ended up with a total of 3 long-term relationships to 3 very abusive people, to 3 people who didn't want me for myself. They wanted me for what they thought they might be able to make out of me, like I was some stack of paper that they were going to practice their origami on. And I came out of it very depressed, very down, psychically completely cut off, had no spiritual connection at all by the end of it, none that I could feel. And this was weird in itself, because I've always had a very strong spiritual connection, even before I was old enough to recognise it. It was there. I've heard things, I've felt things, I've seen things. During this probably 6 or 7 year period, nothing. absolutely nothing, complete blank, totally shut down, and depressed. Went to my GP and was diagnosed with clinical depression and medicated. But very quickly I came off the medication because they just didn't help. The effect the medication had on me, and this is again my own personal experience, so this is what happened with me, not something that I'm advocating for anybody else. The medication that I came onto was just kind of, it literally got me to a stage where I wasn't living, I was existing. I was breathing, I was eating, sleeping, etc., but that was it. There was no joy in life. There was no colour in life. I was calm because I was incapable of being anything else. The medication wouldn't allow it. And I realised that that wasn't going to be a way forward, because sure, I could exist like that for however long, but that was all I was doing. So I came off the medication myself, decided that's not going to work, and I started to try to work on myself and deal with the feelings and the emotions that I had. And those feelings and emotions were very deep. They were very, very painful. As I'm sat here talking to you now, I don't even want to think about some of them, because it would be too difficult to do. And I just tried to patch up myself, my heart, my spirit, as best I could. And I started practicing again. I started practicing my paganism again. I started, after a while, meditating again, trying to reconnect with my path again. All the while feeling very shaky, very sad a lot of the time. There'd be times when I'd just spontaneously burst into tears for no external reason. It just kind of, happened. But gradually, bit by bit, my confidence came back, my emotional strength started to come back, and I started to realize that I had some kind of a purpose in life beyond being a doormat for other people. Because that is something, that is an experience that I had for a very, very long time. And I realized it wasn't just the partners who treated me like a doormat. Other people earlier in my life had treated me like a doormat too. I'd been bullied, I'd been dictated to, I'd been pushed around and abused. Not so much physically, apart from sort of bullies at school, but certainly advantage had been taken, and I'd reached a stage in my life when that was not going to be acceptable any longer. So we've reached a stage at this point of probably about 5 years ago where, I would say 4 or 5 years ago. Actually, thinking about it, 4 years ago. Because one of the catalysts to my splitting up with boyfriend number 3 was that my father nearly died. And he had kidney failure, and he had, he was in hospital, and we almost lost him. And that was the catalyst that split my relationship, because my boyfriend wasn't prepared to accept that at times like that you have to be with your family. There's no other option. So that became, in a sense, another layer of something to deal with, because there's me starting perhaps to get a little bit more confident, get a bit of my own sort of sense of self back, and boom, I get this knock. But fortunately, thanks to the gods, he's still with us. And as I say, I had this process at that point. I had this process of trying to reconnect myself, trying to get back to some kind of normality. And yeah, the last 3-4 years, there's been a lot of challenges. As I say, I've had problems with my father's health that reoccurred a year ago, and that was yet another little sort of knock. But I'm stronger. I'm a lot stronger than I ever thought possible. And where I am now, this past 8 or 9 months, actually not that long, probably 7 months, have been fascinating for me. I have taken on things that I never thought, never even considered were a possibility. I am stronger emotionally than I've been in 10 years, easily. I still get lonely. I'm single, for a start, and let's be perfectly honest, there are times when it would just be lovely to have somebody there to give you a hug when you need one. But, you have to deal with that as best you can. And you have to sort of cope with things like that. But the main thing for me, and again, I can't express a sort of a how-to roadmap for anybody else. All I can do, which is what I am doing, and the whole reason for me recording this video, all I can do is say what I did. I focused on myself. I focused on my path. I focused on my own emotions, my own wants and needs and desires. I focused on the things that I needed for a change. I reconnected with my spirituality. I reconnected with my path. I took up my tarot cards again after. I bought my first set of tarot cards when I was 20, and read them for several years, and then all the sort of relationship stuff happened, and I stopped reading them. I couldn't read them. Simple as, I had no connection. So that all started reconnecting. I picked up my runes again. I started learning new tools like the pendulum, the crystal ball. I started working on my meditation and really asking for my guides to show themselves. It was about time that I, knew they were there, because for years it had seemed like they'd disappeared, chased away by demons created by other people. That is what I did. And as I say, even now, I still have days when I feel down. I still have days when my emotions are running very, very high. I have discovered that I have a real love of crystals. I'm holding one here. I have them always around me. I wear them. This here is a tiger's eye. This here which doesn't show up on the camera at all, or maybe you'd see the green a little bit, is bloodstone. I started looking up, in case you're wondering why I'm wearing these two: grounding, protection, and connection to my zodiac sign, which is Leo, so the lion. Because making this video is not easy. It's not easy exposing this much of myself to people. But I felt that it needed to be done, so that other people could see that they are not the only ones going through stuff. You know? So what I would say is, keep at it. Talk to people. You know, when you can, be around people who care about you. Don't be around people who don't care about you. You know, that is a choice you can make. It's a choice I wish I had made years ago. It was the choice of, if people aren't going to care about me, then I'm not going to be around them. I'm not going to care about them. Try to really, if you have a spiritual path, and here I'm speaking directly to Dark Spirit. You have a spiritual path, follow it. Absorb yourself into it. And, you know, ask for help from whichever gods or goddesses you particularly follow. In my case, I suppose my gods are quite eclectic. Predominantly, the very first gods that really sort of I encountered were the Olympians, and in particular Apollo. And you know, I've had messages from Athena as well. But in the last sort of probably 5 years or so, I've really had a big pull towards the Norse gods, and in particular to Balder, and also to some extent to Thor. And they are around me. I know that I can call on them for help when I need it, and I do regularly. You know, I regularly make a point of just offering up to whichever one of them wants to deal with that particular thing, help me deal with that particular thing. So, you know, follow your path, follow your spirituality, be around people who care about you, be discerning about the people who care about you, and as I say, don't waste energy on those who don't care about you. And more than that, know who you are as a person, and that you are important, and that you matter. That is, more than anything, the thing that I have had to learn, is that I matter to people. Because for the longest time I felt like I didn't. It is so important. And if I were to say there is one thing you have to do, that would be it. And don't bottle your feelings up. Talk to people. Talk to Gypsy. Talk to me if you need to. But talk to people. And you will get there. You will get there. I promise you. Because I'm getting there. And that is one of my little phrases now. When people say, how are you? I neither say, oh, I'm brilliant, I'm wonderful, I'm marvellous, nor do I say, oh, I'm terrible, I'm hopeless. I just say to people, I'm getting there. And that is what I genuinely believe. So I hope I really hope that this has helped. You know, it's very easy, especially as spiritual people, it's very, very easy, I think, to portray an image of having a picture perfect life. But let's be honest, who does? You know, I can't tell you the amount of spiritual people who I have listened to in recent times who have had anything but a picture perfect life. It doesn't exist, I don't think. I was going to say, unless you're extremely lucky, I think that level of luck is probably a myth. You know, we're all real, you know, and we have real things to deal with, you know. So that is why I'm opening up, because I want other people to realise that I'm real, just like they are. So, I hope you've sort of gained something from this. You know, really, you know, like I say, open up to people. They let them know that you are there, and they will help. As I say, talk to Gypsy and talk to me if you have to. If you need to, we're here. And just, you know, I would say to anybody, you know, obviously this is really designed for, as I say, for dark spirit, but you know, to anybody who's out there, who's watching this, you know, if you need somebody to talk to, you know where I am. Take care of yourself, and just really, you know, that's the message. Take care of yourself, and I hope to speak to you soon.